Sarah stared at her screen, a cold sweat prickling her skin. She had been working on this project for months, but tonight, something felt different. The air was thick with tension, and her instincts screamed that she was on the verge of uncovering something monumental. The lines of code scrolled past, a torrent of information she could barely process. Each line seemed to hold a secret, a piece of a puzzle that was far more complex than anything she had ever encountered. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, trying to keep up with the relentless flow of data. It was a blockchain, but unlike any she had ever seen. Complex, encrypted, and vast. The architecture was unlike anything documented in the public domain. It was as if someone had taken the most advanced cryptographic techniques and pushed them to their absolute limits. Billions, no, trillions of dollars pulsed through its veins. The sheer volume of transactions was staggering, each one representing a piece of a much larger, more sinister puzzle. It was clear that this was no ordinary financial system. This wasn't just currency, it was power on an unimaginable scale. The kind of power that could destabilize governments, manipulate markets, and control the fate of nations. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications of what she had found. A message flashed on her screen, stark and chilling in its simplicity. "Stop digging. They are watching." Her heart skipped a beat. Who were they? And how did they know she was looking into this? The message was a clear warning, but it only fueled her curiosity further. Fear, cold and sharp, cut through her. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if unseen eyes were watching her every move. But alongside the fear was a burning determination. She couldn't let this go. Not now. Not when she was so close to the truth. Someone knew. They knew she had found their secret. The thought was terrifying, but it also meant she was on the right track. Whoever was behind this had gone to great lengths to keep it hidden, and that only made her more determined to uncover the truth. But who were they? And what was this blockchain really for? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more pressing than the last. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. The fate of countless lives could depend on what she discovered. Curiosity warred with fear, but Sarah knew one thing: she couldn't ignore this. She had to dig deeper, to find out who was behind this and what their ultimate goal was. The stakes were too high to turn back now. This wasn't just about money, it was about control. Control over information, over economies, over the very fabric of society. The more she thought about it, the more she realized the enormity of what she had stumbled upon. The fate of the world, she realized with a sickening certainty, might hinge on what she did next. Every decision, every keystroke, could have far-reaching consequences. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her, but she couldn't let it paralyze her. She had to learn more, had to understand who was behind this and what they planned. With a deep breath, she steeled herself for the journey ahead. There was no turning back now. The truth was out there, and she was determined to find it no matter the cost. The message had given her a single clue, a name whispered in the digital wind: Jackson Pierce. It was a name that carried weight, a name that had once been synonymous with innovation and brilliance in the tech world. But now it was a ghost, a whisper in the corridors of forgotten history. Ex-CTO of a tech giant rumored to have vanished years ago. His disappearance had been sudden, shrouded in mystery, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and half-baked conspiracy theories. Some said he had gone underground to escape the corporate espionage that plagued his life. Sarah found him in a secluded cabin, miles away from civilization. The journey had been arduous, taking her through dense forests and treacherous paths, but she was determined. She had to find the truth, no matter the cost. He lived off the grid, a ghost haunting the digital world he'd left behind. His cabin was a fortress of solitude, filled with old tech and books, a stark contrast to the high-tech world he once dominated. Jackson listened intently, his face etched with a weariness that spoke of hard-won wisdom. His eyes, though tired, still held a spark of the genius that had once made him a legend. When Sarah finished, he sighed, a heavy, burdened sound. It was as if the weight of the world had settled on his shoulders, a burden he had tried to escape but could never truly leave behind.
They called it Project Reset, he said, his voice low and grave. It was a project that had started with noble intentions but had been twisted into something dark and sinister. A world remade in their image, controlled by the blockchain you found. The technology that was supposed to liberate had become a tool of oppression, a digital cage for humanity.
His words confirmed Sarah's worst fears. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture they formed was terrifying. This wasn't just about money, it was about power, absolute and terrifying. The kind of power that could reshape societies, topple governments, and control the very fabric of reality. They were building a system to control everything, everyone. A digital panopticon where every move, every thought could be monitored and manipulated. Governments, economies, even people's lives, all would be pawns in their game. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, and the fight for freedom had never been more critical. The blockchain wasn't just a tool for control, it was a weapon. Jackson explained how it could be used to manipulate markets, topple governments, even instigate wars. It was a blueprint for global domination, and it was almost operational.
They call her the architect, Jackson said, his voice barely a whisper. She's the mastermind behind it all. Brilliant, ruthless, and utterly convinced of her own righteousness.
He gave Sarah a name, Evelyn Thorne, a name that sent shivers down her spine. Sarah felt a surge of anger, a burning desire to fight back against this injustice. She wouldn't stand by and watch the world be reshaped in someone else's image. She would find Evelyn Thorne. She would expose her, stop her, whatever it took. Finding Evelyn Thorne was easier than they expected. She craved recognition, reveled in the whispers of her genius. She had built a fortress of glass and steel, a monument to her own ego. It was there, in her inner sanctum, that Sarah and Jackson confronted her. Evelyn was everything they expected, cold, calculating, and utterly convinced of her own righteousness.
"You don't understand," she said, her voice like ice. "This world is broken. I'm simply fixing it."
Fixing it? Jackson spat, his voice laced with anger. You're enslaving it, turning people into puppets dancing to your tune.
Evelyn's eyes glittered with a cold fire. "Chaos reigns," she stated, her voice unwavering. "Only I see the path to order. Project Reset will usher in a new era, one free from want, from conflict, from the flaws of human nature."
Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling with barely suppressed fury. People deserve the freedom to make their own choices, even the wrong ones. You can't erase free will in the name of some utopian fantasy.
"Foolish girl," Evelyn scoffed. "You can't stop what has already begun." She pressed a button on her desk, and the room around them seemed to shimmer, the lines between the digital and the real blurring.
The room became a battleground of data streams and code fragments, a physical manifestation of the digital war raging around them. The air was thick with tension, every keystroke echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. The screens flickered with lines of code, each one a potential weapon in this high-stakes conflict.
Sarah, keep pushing. We can do this. We've come too far to let her win now. Every second counts.
Sarah fought back with every keystroke, every line of code she could muster. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, her mind racing to stay one step ahead of Evelyn's relentless attacks. She could feel the pressure mounting, but she refused to back down. She could feel Evelyn's presence in the system, cold and calculating, trying to crush her. Evelyn was a master of manipulation, her digital tendrils reaching into every corner of the network, seeking out vulnerabilities to exploit.
"You think you can stop me? You're nothing but a speck in my system. I control everything here. Your efforts are futile."
Jackson, his face etched with grim determination, worked alongside her. He was a rock, unyielding and steadfast, his experience and knowledge a crucial asset in this battle. He knew the system inside out, every strength and every flaw. He knew the system, knew its weaknesses. He had spent years studying it, preparing for this very moment. His fingers moved with precision, each command a calculated strike against Evelyn's defenses. Together they fought to wrest control from Evelyn, to sever the tendrils of her control. Their synergy was palpable, each complementing the other's strengths, their combined efforts creating a formidable force. The air crackled with energy as the two forces collided. Sparks flew from the hardware, the room illuminated by the glow of the screens and the occasional burst of electricity. It was a battle not just of skill, but of wills.
Focus, Sarah. We're almost there. Don't let up now. Every line of code brings us closer to victory.
The fate of the world, Sarah realized, hung in the balance. Every decision, every keystroke could tip the scales. The weight of responsibility was immense, but she drew strength from it. If Evelyn succeeded, the world would be remade in her image, a cold, sterile place devoid of freedom, a world where individuality was crushed and every action monitored and controlled. Sarah and Jackson were the last line of defense against this dystopian future. Just when hope seemed lost, Sarah saw it. A vulnerability, a single flaw in Evelyn's seemingly impenetrable system. She focused all her energy, all her skill, into exploiting it.
No, you can't do this.
Lines of code flew from her fingertips. A desperate prayer whispered into the digital void. The system shuddered, a digital earthquake rippling through its core. Evelyn screamed in fury, her control slipping, her perfect world crumbling around her. The lines of code that were her weapons turned against her, binding her, trapping her within her own creation.
This isn't over, Sarah.
With a final triumphant keystroke, Sarah severed the connection, shutting down Project Reset. The room went dark, the digital storm receding, leaving behind a silence that was almost deafening. They had won, for now. Evelyn Thorne was neutralized, her system disabled. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief, unaware of the catastrophe it had just avoided. But as Sarah and Jackson stepped out into the dawn light, they knew the fight was far from over.
We did it, but this isn't the end. The blockchain still exists.
The blockchain still existed, a testament to Evelyn's ambition. And somewhere out there, hidden in the shadows, others shared her vision, waiting for their chance to unleash it upon the world. The world had been given a second chance, but the threat remained.
We have to stay vigilant, Sarah. The battle for freedom is far from over.
The battle for freedom, Sarah knew, was far from over. It had only just begun. Sarah, haunted by the near miss, dedicated herself to dismantling the remnants of Project Reset. She knew that the desire for power, for control, could easily resurface. Her mission became a crusade, a relentless pursuit of every trace of Evelyn's insidious network. She vowed to use her skills to safeguard the digital world, to ensure that no one could ever again hold the world hostage to their twisted vision. The fight for freedom, she realized, was a responsibility, a burden she would carry for the rest of her days. The world had been given a second chance, but vigilance was the price of freedom. The fight for a free and open digital future had just begun, and Sarah would be on the front lines, forever vigilant, forever fighting.